This Superman appears in the episode Brave New Metropolis, the 12th episode of the second season of Superman the Animated Series, a series which ran from 1996 to 2000. This episode involves Lois Lane being pulled into an alternate dimension where, surprise surprise, she's dead. Superman in this universe then realizes that his inspirational heroics are futile and he needs to rule with an iron hand. Hence, he partners with Luthor and institutes a new world order. But who is really pulling the strings? Luthor is, of course he is, like what kind of This is pretty standard fare for an alternate Superman, and he's not even that corrupted, and is easily swayed by Lois to try and do the right thing again. A cute interlude of an episode, but nothing full of too much depth. Another that seems to have more depth than it actually does in at number 9, African American Superman from Earth 23. Superhero by day and night, and also President of the United States by day and night, President Calvin Ellis was writer Grant Morrison's homage to President Barack Obama. Earth 23 is home to many interracial and ethnic superheroes. However, other than race and an extremely prominent alter ego, there's not really much difference between the characters. Really, unless their ethnicity is key to their origin or character, it doesn't matter what race a character is. Still, he's got a cool character design and it's always nice to see more representation, but it would be nicer to see it in newly created heroes with their own fleshed out backstories. Someone like our number 8, Subject 1 from the Flashpoint timeline. Flashpoint was a 2011 crossover event wherein the Flash, Barry Allen, went back in time to attempt to save his mother from being murdered by the Reverse Flash. However, in the process he damages the timeline in ways he cannot imagine. One change he causes is that Kal-El's rocket crashes in Metropolis's core, killing several people, meaning he is captured instantly by the government. He is then designated as Subject 1. Kal lives a life of isolation and fear as a shriveled husk of his mainstream self, having never really seen the sun. He ultimately decides to be Superman after Lois's death, but the Flash is able to alter the timeline again, rendering his life as Subject 1 non-existent. Unfortunately, that new timeline he creates is the New 52, or fortunately if you liked it. But it's over now anyway, Rebirth is where it's at. Still, Barry needs to stop messing with timelines, something you know he has not learned if you watch CW's The Flash. He has a problem. Next up, number 7, Justice Lord Superman from Justice League Unlimited: A Better World. This was an alternate universe to the DCAU Justice League. This emerges in a world where Lex is elected president and kills the alternate Flash. Superman is moved into action when Luthor taunts him and says no matter how many times he sends him to jail, he will always find a way to seize power. So Superman promptly kills him with his heat vision, discovering that he likes this new brand of power. Seeing him turn discourages the other heroes who reluctantly rally behind him. This episode is interesting not just because it's rare to see a genuinely power-hungry Superman, but also because it has lasting repercussions on the other dimensions. Seeing an evil Superman spurs the mainstream world, pushing Amanda Waller into action and making the world actively fearful of Superman. It really highlights the importance of Superman's image and how easy it is to slip from hero to villain. Someone else to watch out for at number 6, Superboy Prime from Earth Prime. He's a key player in Crisis on Infinite Earths and Infinite Crisis. Born on the Prime Universe's Krypton but sent to Earth, Clark Kent believes that he is an ordinary young boy until his powers manifest at age 15. However, Superboy's world is consumed by the Anti-Monitor. This occurred as the worlds merged into one in the crossover event, which was meant to simplify comics, and it also altered several characters' origins. He returns as a villain in Infinite Crisis, unable to accept the death of his Earth, which he views as the one true Earth. Ultimately, he ends up changing many backstories and even bringing some characters back to life by punching the barrier of reality. So if you love Jason Todd, that's how he came back to life. Superboy Prime punched a wall. He has since become a villain, driven insane by his rage and inability to accept that he now exists like many heroes in the DC universe outside of any home dimension. Someone who's perfectly at home in their world is our number 5, Ultraman. Ultraman is Superman's evil counterpart from Earth 3, one of the many parallel dimensions in the multiverse. Earth 3 is pretty much an opposite world. For example, Ultraman gets stronger the more he is exposed to kryptonite, and originally he gained new powers with each exposure. Having subjugated his own planet completely, he seeks power in all forms and attempts to conquer other worlds and other dimensions. He has existed both pre- and post-Crisis, as well as appearing in the New 52, and he will most likely pop up in Rebirth. Ultraman works well as an opposite and is a fun diversion, but is rarely very well fleshed out. This means that his character can be difficult to maintain after a while, and for some wears a little thin. Think Bizarro. But it's a fun world to jump into. If you want a quick introduction, check out the film Justice League Crisis on Two Earths, which was released in 2010. Honestly, the coolest thing about that is Owlman and Superwoman. the evil Batman and Wonder Woman. It's worth it just for that. If you like a Superman in an evil world, then you'll like our number 4, Overman. Overman is Superman from Earth 10, and he is more commonly known as Nazi Superman, because why have allusions to it when you can just go all out? Earth 10 is a world under the control of the Nazi Party, mostly because Superman landed in occupied Sudetenland in 1938, and was raised by Hitler. Hitler was inspired by a Superman comic and hence modeled his hero after his opponent's ideal to crush their spirits. While Overman opposed lots of their tactics and the Holocaust itself, he continues to serve the Nazi state. He comes to an unfortunate end after the death of his clone, Overgirl. He supplies information to the freedom fighters and is eventually overthrown. The tale of Karl Kant is a bit of an obvious one, but still interesting. It has the rise and fall you expect and plays out a common scenario people think of, because when you need a default alternate history, many look to Nazis. Number 3. Superman from Kingdom Come. He first appeared in the Elseworld story Kingdom Come #1 in 1996. This is a disheartened and broken Superman at odds with the aesthetics and beliefs of the modern world. Well, the at-time modern world. The 90s. After Lois is killed by the Joker, Superman is devastated, but even more so when the Joker is killed by a new hero named Magog, who comes to represent a new generation of heroes who will kill for justice. Superman retreats, feeling out of touch with the world, but is drawn back to take on these new anti-heroes and show them that old school values can still yield lasting results. Different from many alternate versions in that one sad event doesn't turn him into a killing machine, this Superman plays out the very real way that Superman's idealistic morals can chafe against a society overwhelmed by cynicism. It's a good story with great art that will make you want to hope again. Which is definitely not the reaction that our number 2 Superman had to Lois's death, that being High Chancellor Superman from Injustice: Gods Among Us. A fighting game released in 2013, this game proved just as popular for its storyline as beating all of your friends with superior button mashing abilities. At least that's how I play. The story featured a Superman driven mad after the Joker kills Lois Lane and their unborn child. Superman kills the Joker by sticking his hand right through his chest and institutes a new world order, in a move that plunges the world and its heroes into war. The game also launched an extremely successful tie-in comic, heralded as one of the best alternate reality comics in a long time. The series detailed the 5 years of Superman's reign and concluded in 2016. So check it out if you're interested, it was really good. Fleshed out and nuanced, this comic will make you fear a Superman who believes that what he is doing is just. The story will continue in the game Injustice 2, set to be released in May of 2017. Which brings us to number 1, Soviet Superman from Superman Red Sun. This was a 3-issue miniseries released in 2003. A key part of Superman's mythos is his adherence to and representation of traditional American values, i.e. truth and justice. However, it can be argued that that is largely because of his upbringing, i.e. look at Overman. This series asked, what if the rocket-carrying Superman to Earth had landed somewhere else, again, but this time the USSR. Raised as an asset for communist Russia, this Superman's existence causes global tensions in a time of the Cold War. This Superman is colder and much more pragmatic. He doesn't have the warmth or approachability of the American-raised version, and he will do whatever it takes to protect his nation, costs be damned. This can be seen in the heartbreaking sequence where he has Wonder Woman break free of her own lasso of truth in an act that damages her irreparably. This Superman is well thought out, and defined by an entirely different life, not just one event, or cause the whole universe is topsy-turvy. Check this comic out if you want to read a truly unique take on Superman. He has all the things the others on this list have, and more.
And at number 10 is Earth 18, Saganawa Anna, aka Super Chief. Probably pronounced that wrong. So Super Chief is a bison-headed Native American hero, and is an analog of Superman's character on this Earth based off of the Justice Riders comic. So what makes this Earth special? Well, it's perpetual steampunk Wild West. With its culture and technology frozen in a late 19th century state, it has things like a telegraph internet, and a bunch of other really interesting steampunk inventions. So not a ton is known about Super Chief's full story, but he is flanked by the likes of other alternate versions, such as Batlash, Madame 44, and El Diablo. Up next, number 9 is Captain Carrot and his amazing Zoo Crew. What would our alternate Superman series be without a mention of Captain Carrot and his amazing Zoo Crew? The one you guys always like to poke fun at. And fair enough, it's quite ridiculous. So if you're unfamiliar, this one comes to us from Earth C-, or rather Earth 26, a parallel Earth that is populated by super adorable and comical animal superheroes, who are members of the superhero team Just a Lot of Animals, aka the JLA. Cute, isn't it? The Superman equivalent is Captain Carrot himself, a rabbit, who, aside from residing on that Earth, actually plays a significant role in Grant Morrison's The Multiversity. And at number 8 is Superman from DC The New Frontier. In this beautifully drawn story by Darwin Cook on Earth 21, we're in the 1950s, and Superman has been active since the 40s. But by now, he's a US government agent, who feels the need to go against them when he feels that the tension between humans and superhumans has to end. This all occurs as the Cold War has started to push the age of superheroes into decline, just as an alien presence pops up on Earth, calling the heroes to band together again to help the US government save the planet. Up next at number 7 is Christopher Kent. Earth 16's Superman first appeared in 2008's Countdown Arena. He's bald and dresses rather casually. Jeans and a t-shirt. Yet he's more evolved than our original Superman, able to reformat his power source to any energy source that he can consciously choose, which he does to effortlessly defeat the versions of Superman from Earth 30 and 31, but dies when trying to defeat Monarch when he uses a massive amount of energy that causes his body to kick the can. And at number 6 is Shogun of Steel. Meet the Japanese version of Superman. He too goes by Kal-El, is from Krypton, but he also wields a badass samurai sword. And rather than Clark Kent, he goes by the name of Hoshi. So in Shogun of Steel, his ship lands in the 14th century war-torn feudal Japan. He ends up being convinced by a bunch of warriors, the equivalents of the Flash, Batgirl, and Hawkman, to join a rebellion against the sinister Shogun of Steel. And at number 5 is Air Superman. Air Superman is from a limited edition series that came out in October 2007, taking place on Earth 8. He's a German Superman. Not a Nazi, just a German, and was one of Monarch's transdimensional recruits. After doing Monarch's bidding and attacking Tracer as a response to Lord Havoc's refusal of his offer, he was a part of an attack against the extremists in Slovakia, and then murdered via impalement by Havoc. Up next, number 4 is Superwoman. If you've watched any of our other alternate lists, you'll know that there's always a gender-bending version of every single hero out there, and a lot for the Flash. Not entirely sure how that happened, but cool nonetheless. Anyway, meet Superwoman, from the gender-reversed Earth 11. She's pretty similar to the main timeline Superman. Earth's greatest hero, is good pals and allies with Batwoman, and shares the same abilities. Up next, number 3 is Super Demon. Gotta love the amalgams. So here we have Super Demon, but he also goes by Etrigan, and is the amalgamation of, you guessed it, the Man of Steel and Etrigan the Demon. He leads the League of Shadows on this world, which is essentially the magical version of Earth 13, and is home to a lot of other really cool characters who are all basically wizards. He's from the planet Camelot, fights evil in Merlin's name, and fights vampires. He's also got a few additional tricks. He's bonded to a mortal vessel that allows him to take on the appearance of a normal human being, he can recite a magical verse to summon a powerful burst of hellfire, and he has fire breath, which is pretty damn cool. Or hot, rather. And at number 2 is the Superman. Getting a little historical here, let's take a look back at one of the early incarnations of the character. Back when Siegel and Schuster were just starting out and decided to give comics a try, they had self-published a book they called Popular Comics, and in it was an early version of Superman that, while heroic, had no actual powers. Made sometime in 1933, this Superman dressed casually, and was often compared to Slam Bradley, another character that they would create in 1936. It was rejected multiple times, so much so that Siegel almost tried to ditch Schuster for a more reputable artist, which caused Schuster to burn the Superman in retaliation, destroying this version of Superman entirely, minus the cover. And finally, at number 1 is The Reign of Superman. Here we have the Superman who started it all. Back in 1933, Jerry Siegel wrote a short story that was illustrated by his friend and also classmate Joe Shuster. Not only was it the start to a brilliant friendship and partnership, but it also gave way to the origins of Superman. This Superman, though, is quite nefarious. He uses an experimental drug to get psychic powers that are incredibly powerful and uses it for selfish and profitable reasons. Now, this was self-published in Siegel's fanzine Science Fiction, which didn't do all too well at the time, but it gave way for the inspiration needed to develop another character called Superman shortly afterwards, this time in the form of the comic strip, aka our number 2 spot, who would then evolve later on into the character that first appeared in 1938 on Action Comics number 1. Kicking off this list is Centaur Superman, from the 4-issue miniseries Whom Gods Destroy, which is part of the Elseworlds publication imprint. For those of you who don't know, during the Silver Age, DC made an attempt to create a distinction between what was canon in its universe continuity and what additional narratives were outside of that continuity, and Elseworlds was a big part of that, including stories such as Gotham by Gaslight. Anyway, Whom Gods Destroy was created by Chris Claremont and featured a whole lot of Greek mythology in the mix. The story follows a timeline where Germany is still under Nazi reign, and is controlled by the god Adonis. Superman is transformed into an evil centaur, and then is transformed again into a female version of Superman, who then helps defeat Nazi Wonder Woman? Yeah. It ends with Superman, Lana Lang, and Lois Lane, who has then taken up the mantle of Wonder Woman, all moving to the moon and living happily happily ever after. I can see why that wouldn't exactly fit into DC's continuity. Keeping with the absurdity, at our number 9 on our list is Tarzan Superman from Sons of the Jungle. This one is a crossover between Superman and Tarzan comics and only had 3 issues. So Lord Greystoke of the Tarzan stories grew up in England while Kal-El is raised by apes in the jungle. The two are brought together at the mythical lost city of Opar, and by the end it's decided that Greystoke will stay in the jungle while Superman heads back to England in his place. At number 8 we've got Bizarro. Okay, yes, this is a character on its own, but it wouldn't be fair if we didn't touch on Bizarro at all on one of these lists. Because really, he's the ultimate alternate Superman, and tragically so. Basically the Frankenstein's monster version of Supes, Bizarro first appeared in Superboy number 68 in 1958. Sometimes an enemy of Superman, other times an anti-hero, Bizarro was created as the mirror image of the Man of Steel, and shares many of the same abilities as Superman. Created by a duplicating ray that was used on Superboy, Bizarro's storyline plays out quite a bit like the monster in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. He's shunned by society and is eventually killed in his first storyline by his maker. Despite this, the character was a big hit, even spawning a whole Bizarro world feature in Adventure Comics, and has made over 40 appearances in other titles as of 2016. And at 7 is Amish Superman. Taking place in a storyline commonly known as The Nail, this version of Superman takes place in a timeline where Martha Kent's pickup truck gets a flat tire and she never finds Kal-El. Pulling some real butterfly effect. This one scores points for hilarity because Superman is then instead adopted by an Amish couple, and Metropolis turns out to be in a complete mess since Superman isn't there to defend it. But hey, he's Amish. At number 6 we've got Super Soldier. Ever wonder what fusing Superman and Captain America together would do? So taking place in an alternate reality, Clark Kent, who is just a regular human in this timeline, volunteers to fight in World War II, and scientists do a bunch of experiments on him in order to make him into a super soldier. Sound familiar? They use cells taken from an alien spacecraft and a supercharge of solar energy, and then he turns out like this, looking oh so American. Up next at number 5 we've got Superman Red and Superman Blue. This one's from what DC labeled as an imaginary story that appeared in Superman 162 back in July of 1963. Superman splits into 2 different men, both of whom are quite preoccupied with their love lives. One marries Lois Lane and the other marries Lana Lang, and yes, it's just as cheesy as you can imagine. Eventually they revamped the story in 1998, but there's just no beating the twinsies vibe that the 1963 original created. At number 4 we've got Superman True Brit. In this alternate timeline, Kal-El's spaceship doesn't land in Kansas, USA, but in England instead. He prefers tea over coffee, and he uses the word mate a lot. Written by John Cleese and Kim Howard Johnson, there's a whole lot of humor in it, and it had a mixed reception from fans who felt that the British stereotypes were a little worn out and tasteless. It also features a great moment where Colin Clark accidentally impales another player with his cricket bat. Yeah. And at number 3 we've got Superman Last Son of Earth. Another Elseworlds imprint, The Last Son of Earth was a 2-issue miniseries released in 2000 that reverses Superman's origin story. There's a whole lot of subtext addressing xenophobia and authoritarianism, 2 themes that have been quite prominent in the Golden Age Superman stories, and in comics in general. But aside from that, it's a pretty cool story about Superman being sent from Earth to Krypton, where he finds a Green Lantern ring and basically becomes a super Green Lantern. Superman's father, Jonathan Kent, builds a spaceship to send his son away from Earth when they find out that a meteor is about to strike the planet, which is how Superman gets to Krypton. Eventually he grows up and learns about where he came from, and then goes back to Earth where a dictator named Luthor is pretty much destroying the planet. Up next at number 2 we've got Zod. Here's another Elseworlds narrative for you guys, set during World War II. JSA, the Unholy Tree, was a third part to a story that was originally started in the Liberty Files, the first being set in 1942 Egypt, where Bat, aka Batman, is hunting down Jack the Grin, aka the Joker, who has stolen German intel. The Germans beat him to it, creating an Ubermensch in the form of Martian Manhunter, who turns against Hitler. So context aside, by the time that part 3 starts in 1948, the war is over, but KGB agents are still running around, causing Bat to run into Clark Kent, who is a new agent in charge of a group responsible for hunting down a secret plan called the Trigger. And then we're introduced to Superman in the form of none other than Zod. Oh, ain't that a familiar face. In this timeline, Zod is another Kryptonian who doesn't have the same morals our traditional Man of Steel had. Zod then spends most of part 4 diverting Bat and the team from finding Trigger. He ends up fighting Bat and Mercury, aka the Flash, and then Bat ends up taking a special serum to take out Zod, who by this point is just a complete murderous psychopath. And finally, at number 1 we've got Bruce Wayne. Okay, so this one may throw you off a little bit, but in a one-shot called Superman Speeding Bullets, Kal-El is adopted by Thomas and Martha Wayne, who decide to name the baby Bruce. When Bruce's parents are killed, Bruce incinerates the mugger with his heat vision, realizing that he's capable of powers beyond belief. He eventually dons the cape and cowl as Batman, brutally beating up criminals in Gotham, but after Lois Lane intervenes, he decides to switch over to Superman as his alias. Being the amalgamation of 2 of our favorite heroes, there's a bunch of other great gems in this one, including Lex Luthor becoming disfigured and turning into the Joker. Definitely check it out.